Hello students. Today we are going to start a new chapter, chapter number 5, X-ray spectroscopy. So earlier in fourth chapter, we have studied the effect of magnetic field and electric field on the spectral line, that is known as Zeeman effect and Stark effect. Now today we are going to start the new chapter where we are going to study X-ray spectroscopy. And in the first lecture, I'm going to give you introduction and the nature of X-rays. So we shall discuss about the nature of X-rays also. So you know that X-rays, they are a very important type of electromagnetic radiation, and the invention of X-ray is really a milestone in the history of physics. So X-rays are invented by German physicist Röntgen in 1895. While doing some experiments with the discharge through gas in an evacuated tube, he found certain very highly energetic ionizing radiations, and these unknown radiations he has named as X-rays. So these X-rays nowadays, they are very useful in number of applications, like in medicine for radiography imaging technique, then in industries, then in scientific research, in crystallography, study of crystals, as you know, depending on Bragg's diffraction condition, these diffraction patterns produced by X-rays in the crystalline materials, they can reveal a very important information about the crystalline structure, lattice parameter, and so on. So there are a number of applications of X-rays, and therefore the study of X-ray is very important. So in this chapter, we are going to study the interaction of X-rays with the matter and how these X-ray spectra are useful. And we are also going to study about the production of X-rays, that is the X-ray tube, then the types of X-rays, continuous X-ray and the characteristic X-ray, the origin of X-ray, continuous X-ray and origin of characteristic X-ray. Then certain laws like Duane and Hunt's law, Mosley's law, importance of Mosley's law, OJ effect or OJ spectroscopy. All these things we are going to study in this particular chapter. Okay, so let us begin with some basic information about X-rays. So X-rays are electromagnetic radiation, and if you see this electromagnetic spectrum, we are here at the visible region of the uh, electromagnetic spectrum. So to the left of visible region, you know that the energy is increasing in this direction and the wavelength is decreasing. Whereas if you go to the right of visible, then the energy will be decreasing, but the wavelength will increase. So just to the left of ultraviolet rays, you know that this is the region of X-ray radiation. And the wavelength, in terms of wavelength, you can say the range is from 0.01 nanometer to approximately 10 nanometers. So this is the range of X-ray radiation, or you can say X-ray uh, part of electromagnetic spectra. Okay, so first of all, we are going to discuss about the production of X-rays, how X-rays are produced in a typical X-ray tube. So the main components of X-ray tube are first of all the anode, where we have placed the target material. Okay, so target material is the actual material from which the X-rays are given out. The X-rays are given out. Now the important condition of the target material is that the target material should have high melting point, because lot of heat is produced in this while producing the X-rays in the target material. So it should not melt at that such a high temperature. So materials like tungsten or molybdenum or copper, these are usually used as a target material for production of X-rays. So this target material is fixed along with this anode. Then we have cathode here. This is the filament. The filament is electrically heated with some low tension supply. I have not shown the power supply connections here, both for cathode and anode. But remember, cathode is kept at negative potential and the anode is kept at very high positive potential. So the positive potential at the anode is typically several kilovolt. So high positive potential is applied. Now, because of this low tension electric supply given to the filament will be heated and thermionically electrons will be emitted out of this filament. And this is the tube. You can see this is the glass envelope containing vacuum. So it is evacuated, this glass tube. And outside we have a lead casing in order to avoid any leakage of X-rays out of this tube, because X-rays are highly energetic. They can be dangerous to a living animals. So to the human being also they can be injurious. Therefore, the tube is properly sealed with lead casing, and you can see oil for heat conduction. So a lot of heat is generated when the electrons strike on the target material. So in order to dissipate that heat energy, certain cooling mechanism is provided here. So oil, or in some cases other coolant, are circulated here in order to dissipate the heat from the target material. Then you can see this is a typical window for just emitting the electron out of this tube. According to the required application, they can be properly focused through this window. And this window, typically it is made up of beryllium. So beryllium is an element which is transparent to X-rays. So X-rays can pass through the beryllium. It should not pass through this tube or lead like that. So these materials are opaque to X-rays. Only beryllium is transparent to X-rays, so it can pass through the this beryllium window. And this is the typical focusing cap, so that electrons are properly focused along the direction of the target material. So let us see now how this works. So because of this low tension supply applied to the filament, electrons are emitted. The anode is kept at very high positive potential. Therefore, the electrons will be accelerated with a very high kinetic energy attained because of high positive potential at the anode. So they travel towards the target material. So when they enter into the target material with a very high kinetic energy, the electrons inside the target material, they will be rearranged. And during this rearrangement of the electrons, the X-rays, unknown rays, they are given out of this target material. These are called as X-rays. So this is how the X-rays are produced in this typical X-ray tube. Okay, now let us discuss more about the nature of X-rays. So for that, I have just selected this X-ray spectra of two elements, tungsten and molybdenum. So these two elements, they are usually used as the target material. So these plots or the X-ray spectra is at the same temperature. You can see 35 degree Kelvin and 35 degree. This is the relative intensity on this y-axis, and on x-axis we have wavelength of X-rays. So you can see the X-rays are initiated at certain wavelength, which is the minimum wavelength of X-rays observed. Below that, there will be no X-ray radiation observed. So this is the minimum wavelength. We shall talk more later on about this. Then this red pattern, you can see this is for molybdenum, and this is blue one is for tungsten. So after this minimum wavelength, you can see there are all possible wavelengths in this X-ray spectra of the elements, and they are gradually varying. Their intensity is varying. Initially, the intensity is increasing at certain maximum, and after that it will fall gradually. So it contains all possible wavelengths, the X-ray spectra of tungsten and molybdenum also. Therefore, this is called as a continuous spectra. Okay, this is a continuous spectra. But you can see some spikes here. Okay, certain high intensity peaks are observed here. So these are called as characteristic X-rays. These are called as characteristic X-ray. So this is continuous X-ray. You can see this continuous line, and these peaks represent the characteristic X-rays. So let us discuss more about these patterns. What are the specifications and important features of the X-ray spectra? So there are two types of X-rays: continuous X-ray and characteristic X-ray. Just I have mentioned here. This continuous pattern, this represent the continuous X-ray, and these peaks, high intensity peaks on the background of continuous X-ray spectra. These high intensity spikes, they are representing the characteristic X-rays. Okay, so there are one more way to just classify the X-ray radiation uh, on the basis of certain names. For example, K radiation. So they are called as hard radiation, hard X-rays. They are more penetrating. So depending upon from which particular orbit or shell the X-rays are originated, accordingly they are named as K radiation, L radiation, M radiation, like that. So if you have X-rays from the innermost orbit, they are having very shorter wavelength, that means very high energy, therefore they are highly penetrating. They are highly penetrating X-rays because they possess high energy. They are also called as hard X-rays. They are also called as hard X-rays. See, another type, L radiation. So K radiation innermost, then slightly outer shell, that is L radiation, second shell you can say. So L radiation comparatively they are soft, that means having slightly higher wavelength or lower energy. So therefore they are known as soft X-rays, and obviously they are less penetrating because they are having less energy as compared to the K radiation. So this is how you can also uh, classify the X-rays on the basis of from which shell they are originated, and depending on their penetration power also, hard X-rays and soft X-rays. Hard X-rays are more penetrating, soft X-rays are less penetrating. So K radiation and L radiation. Now different target materials at the same accelerating potential, they have same lambda minimum. You can see in this particular X-ray spectra. So both molybdenum and tungsten. So these patterns, they are shown for the same accelerating potential. Okay, they are shown for the same accelerating potential. So therefore here the actual starting wavelength of the X-ray spectra here, it is same for both of these. So this is the minimum wavelength, lambda minimum. It is same at the same accelerating potential for different target material. So uh, it is independent of the target material. It is dependent on only the accelerating potential. Remember, and that we are going to just now discuss more about that. What is known as Duane-Hunt's law. Okay, so let us discuss about an important law, Duane-Hunt's law or Duane-Hunt's rule. So what is this rule? The short wavelength limit varies inversely as accelerating voltage. You can see here now the for the same target material, different graphs are shown here. Okay, different graphs are shown here. X-ray spectra are shown here, uh, but at different accelerating potential. This first one is for 30 kilovolt accelerating potential, second one for 40, third one for 50, fourth one for 70 kilovolt. Okay, so you can see here the depending on the accelerating potential, the lambda minimum, it is different. Okay, and you can see as you increase the accelerating potential, the lambda minimum shifts towards the lower wavelength side. So that is what Duane-Hunt's rule. Short wavelength limit varies inversely as accelerating voltage, or in mathematically you can say lambda minimum is inversely proportional to accelerating potential. This is known as, this statement is known as Duane-Hunt's rule. So lambda minimum is inversely proportional to accelerating potential. That means if you increase the accelerating potential, lambda minimum will decrease towards the lower wavelength side. Okay, so this is what the Duane-Hunt's law. Duane-Hunt's law. So this is very important rule specifying the limit of minimum wavelength in X-ray spectra for any given target material. So let us discuss some important features of X-rays from this particular X-ray spectra given in this particular diagram. Now X-ray is also known as inverse photoelectric effect Why it is known as inverse photoelectric effect? You have studied photoelectric effect. What is photoelectric effect? The electromagnetic radiation, that means photon, when striking on the particular material, emits electron, and the energy of the emitted electron is function of this wavelength of the incident photons. Okay, so photon energy is transferred into the kinetic energy of the electron. That is what photoelectric effect. And what is production of X-rays? It is actually inverse photoelectric effect. So here kinetic energy of electron is transferred into the photon energy. It is transferred into photon energy. Whereas in photoelectric effect, photon energy is transferred into kinetic energy of the electron. So this is how you can say production of X-ray is actually a inverse photoelectric effect. It is a inverse photoelectric effect. So according to Duane and Hertz's law, you know that in order to produce this particular high kinetic energy to the electron, we are applying several kilovolt of potential. So the kinetic energy of the electron, or the potential here, you can say it is expressed in EV. The energy of the electron in terms of this energy, electric energy, can represent in EV. So EV is equal to the maximum energy will be produced at the minimum wavelength, therefore h nu max. So this energy is equal to h nu. Photon energy, you know that photon energy is equal to h nu. So what is the photon energy here? You can see EV. So equivalent electric energy is EV, and that should be equal to h nu max. Therefore you can see here this EV is equal to hc upon lambda minimum, because nu max is c upon lambda. Actually frequency is c upon lambda, but since maximum frequency, that must correspond to the minimum wavelength. Okay, maximum frequency means minimum wavelength, therefore c upon lambda minimum. So EV is equal to hc upon lambda minimum. Or you can further find out from this equation the relation for lambda minimum. You can find out. So lambda minimum will be equal to, so lambda minimum, so hc upon EV. Okay, if you rearrange the term, EV you can take in the denominator, and this lambda minimum will be here. So lambda minimum will be equal to hc upon EV. So you can see here lambda minimum is inversely proportional to accelerating potential here, and that is what the mathematical form of the Duane and Hertz rule. All this h is Planck's constant, c is velocity of electromagnetic radiation, that is the velocity of light, is the charge on electron. So this is what the, all these things are constant, only variable is v. So lambda minimum is inversely proportional to the accelerating potential. Okay, now let us discuss more about these features of X-rays from this graph here. So as you increase the accelerating potential, so you can see the maximum intensity of the X-ray will increase. So intensity, relative intensity, you can see it is increasing with the accelerating potential. So the peak, you can say maximum intensity. So at 30 kilovolt it is at this particular level, 40 it has increased, for 50, 70 it is continuously increasing with the accelerating potential. Then the actual wavelength at which this maximum peak appears, it is shifting towards the left. You can see here lambda m, you can say lambda max. So at this particular wavelength, for 30 kilovolt it is here, whereas at 40 kilovolt it is here. For 50 it is shifting towards the left, so it is shifting towards the lower wavelength side. It is shifting towards the lower wavelength side. Now this lambda minimum which I have mentioned here, if you substitute the values of h, c and e, so this constant comes to be you can see 12,400. Okay, so in terms of angstrom minute, lambda minimum will be equal to 12,400 divided by the accelerating potential. 12,400 divided by the accelerating potential. So as I have mentioned here, the maximum which appears at a certain wavelength, lambda m. So this particular lambda m into v raised to half is constant. It should be lambda max actually, lambda max. Okay, so this particular you can say lambda m, that is lambda max into v raised to half, that should be constant here. Then one more thing you can notice here is that as you increase the accelerating potential, after certain accelerating potential, the spikes are appearing on the background of continuous X-ray. Some at certain wavelengths, the intensity is very much higher, of the order of 10 raised to 4 uh, times greater than the continuous X-ray intensity. Okay, so these are called as characteristic X-ray. So beyond certain potential, accelerating potential, on the background of continuous X-ray, the high intensity X-rays are appearing. These are called as characteristic X-rays. These are called as characteristic X-ray. So this is all about the features of X-ray. So X-ray intensity increases with the accelerating potential. The lambda minimum shifts towards the lower wavelength side as you increase the accelerating potential. The lambda max also shifts towards the left side, that means towards the lower wavelength. Lambda max means the wavelength at which there is a maximum intensity. Okay, so that also shifts towards the left, and lambda max, it should be lambda max actually. Lambda max into v raised to half is constant, so as to lambda max into v raised to half is constant. Okay, so these are some important features of X-rays. Now let us try to understand how X-rays are produced. Continuous X-rays are produced. Okay, so continuous X-rays where all possible wavelengths of X-rays are present, except certain limit we known as, that is lambda minimum, as specified by the Duane-Hund's law. So you can see this electron, when the electron is accelerated and they are striking on the target material, atom of the target material, what happens here? So classically you can say that this electron has high kinetic energy. Suppose the initial energy of the electron is EI, because of sufficient high applied positive potential on the anode, it has attained very high energy, kinetic energy, so that is suppose EI. So with this energy, the electron strikes to the target material and it has an interaction with the target nucleus. Okay, it has an interaction with target nucleus. So this is the target nucleus, and during this interaction we can say there can be a collision, okay, inelastic collision. So where it loses certain amount of energy, the electron will lose certain amount of energy, and because of this interaction, this target material will give out that received amount of energy from the electron in the form of certain radiation. These radiations are known as X-rays. So this, at this particular stage, suppose the electron energy is EF, final energy, okay, and this initial electron energy is EI. So the photon given out will be of energy EI minus EF. So that will be the energy of photon, that is equal to h nu. So energy is E is equal to h nu. So E is what? EI minus EF. So during this interaction or collision, you can say, of the incident electron with the target nuclei, it has lost certain amount of energy, and this energy appear in the form of photon, and this energy EI minus EF is equal to h nu. So photon of frequency nu will be given out, and this electron will have certain less energy, that is EF. But remember, this electron will now collide with some other atom inside the target material. There also it will have interaction, but now the energy is slightly less than the initial energy. So the photon given out here in the second collision will be having less energy than this. Less energy means less frequency. So like this, when the electron enters into the target material, it can undergo several collisions before coming to rest, or before losing all of its kinetic energy, or simply energy of the electron. So because of these collisions, photons of different frequencies in the decreasing order. Initially, with first collision, the energy will be greater. Then second collision, energy will be further less and less, like this. So there can be different possibilities of collision, and in each collision photon of different energy is given out. Therefore we get a continuous X-ray spectra. That means all possible wavelengths are present, because different electron, when they are striking on the target material, they have different amount of energy. Then different amount of energies are absorbed by this, they are involved in the collision with the target nuclei, and therefore photons of different energies are given out. That means different wavelengths are given out. So all possible wavelengths are present in the X-ray spectra produced in this manner. And this is how one can explain why these continuous X-rays are produced. So H nu is equal to EI minus EF. That will be the energy of a particular photon. Now the energy of the electron you can represent as the kinetic energy. So 1/2 mvi square, where vi is the initial velocity of the electron and m is mass of the electron. So this energy given out in the form of photon, that is h nu, that must be equal to the initial kinetic energy of the electron minus the final kinetic energy of the electron, where Vf is the final velocity. That means after this interaction, whatever the velocity of the electron, that is the final velocity. Okay. So 1/2 mvi square minus 1/2 mvf square. That is the difference between the two kinetic energy of the electron before collision, after collision. So that will be the energy of the photon. That will be the energy of the photon. So when the electron is brought to rest in a single collision, what will happen? Let us imagine this particular situation. So suppose the electron undergo a collision or interaction in such a manner that it loses all of its energy. Okay, it loses all of its energy. So in that particular case, the photon given out will be of maximum frequency. Maximum frequency, so you can say h nu max. But immediately its velocity will become zero because it has lost all of its energy in a single interaction or collision. So Vf must be equal to zero. Vf means final velocity. So if you substitute Vf is equal to zero in this relation, so h nu will be equal to 1/2 m vi square. Vi square. So h nu max is equal to 1/2 m vi square. And nu max, what I have written here nu max, that is because this photon will be have highest energy, therefore highest frequency also. Therefore a suffix max representing the maximum frequency of the photon given out. So therefore the energy of the electron E into V, that must be equal to 1/2 m vi square. 1/2 m vi square. So this EV must be equal to h nu max. H nu max, and h nu max you can represent by C upon lambda minimum. So h into C upon lambda minimum. So we can prove the Duhallen-Hund's law by this way also, considering the collision classically of the electron with the nucleus. Okay, so lambda minimum here you can say by rearranging the term, it is again Hc upon Ev. So this is how we can prove the Duhallen-Hund's law also. Okay, so this is the discussion for the production of continuous X-ray, and I have discussed here how the continuous X-rays are produced. So in the next lecture, we are going to study how the characteristic X-rays are produced, because characteristic X-rays, they are having a number of applications in different fields. They are highly monochromatic. Characteristic X-rays are highly monochromatic. We have seen the very sharp peak on the background of continuous X-ray. So that represent a characteristic X-ray. So next time we shall study about the origin of characteristic X-rays.